Hundreds of thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, the planet Notron hosted a war between two races, the Zhell, the ancestor race of humanity, and the Taung. The 13 Zhell nations of Notron reorganized themselves into a collective force known as the Battalions of Zhell, and the war raged for centuries, but the Taung were being outdone by their rivals. Eventually, the Taung, led by their general known as the Doom of Ulmara, managed to conquer the enemy capital, Great Zhell, but in doing so, their forces were brought to the brink of destruction, and their courageous leader was killed. Now led by one of their warriors, Rexutu the Unconquerable, the remaining Taung forces were convinced to make their noble last stand in the enemy city, with the Zhell forces closing in to recapture their capital and finish the Taung once and for all. The battalions of Zhell amassed the majority of their forces at the base of the mountain where which the city was located, but in a stroke of luck for the Taung, the mountain, a dormant volcano, violently erupted and wrought destruction upon the battalions of Zhell, and the ash from the volcano cloaked the planet in darkness for almost 2 years. The Taung used these 2 years of darkness to almost bring about the utter destruction of their native enemies, and named themselves the Verda, the Warriors of Shadow, in honour of the great darkness of Notron. But, despite the Taung having the upper hand for a couple of years, the war reignited as the darkness faded, and the Zhell recovered, regaining their full strength and defeating the Taung. Now the dominant leaders of the planet, which was eventually renamed Coruscant, the Zhell exiled the remaining remnants of the Taung, and the defeated race fled to the planet Rune. For over 100,000 years, the Taung resided on Rune, rebuilding their strength and power. It was here that the Verda poem was written, recounting the Shadow Warriors' victory in the past. Around 7000 BBY, a young Taung known as Tesolish Mandalore rose through the ranks of the military and decided that Rune was no longer fit to be their home planet. The Taung travelled to a planet home to gigantic beasts known as the Mythosaurs. Mandalore led his people in a brutal conquest of the world, using primitive weapons to test their skills and, eventually, brought about the extinction of the Mythosaur race. Inspired by the valour, strength and courage of their great leader, the Taung began to almost worship him, renaming the conquered world Mandayame, which translated to the home of Mandalore. Equally, the Taung renamed themselves as a species to Mandalorians, or Mandoade, meaning sons and daughters of Mandalore. The word Mandalore itself began to signify the sole ruling leader of the people. Mandalore, now renamed Mandalore I, crafted a helmet from the bones of a dead mythosaur, which would be the symbol of their single ruling leader, to be passed down the generations. The skull of the mythosaur also became an official symbol of the Mandalorian people, and Mandalore I reorganized his people into the Mandalorian Crusaders. However, he would never lead his people on another conquest. Instead, a new Mandalore known as Mandalore the Conqueror would be the first to lead the Mandalorian Crusaders on a conquest of the entire system that Mandalore was situated. The Mandalorian people were now ready, and so begun the Mandalorians' rise to power in the Old Republic. I really hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new about the Mandalorian people, so don't forget to like it and be sure to subscribe so you're notified for part 2 of the Mandalorian origins. Be sure to come and join my Discord if you haven't. I'd love to have you there so we can talk about Star Wars. Follow me on social media and check out my Patreon page if you want to support the channel further. I will see you guys in the next video, but until then, may the Force be with you. Always.